Welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King, joined here by Jason Caldwell. We'll be joined later in the show by Christian Clemente because the more we thought about it, the more we talked about it this evening, we realized how much we actually had to touch on across all kinds of different sports. And so we're gonna try to show off our expertise level a little bit and see how many different bases we can cover. We're gonna start off with basketball, get into baseball, maybe a little bit of golf as their season came to a close, and then Jason and Christian will talk about the upcoming recruiting weekend. So strap in, and it should be a good show. Wanted to start off with the news from Wednesday. Very newsy day for Auburn basketball, knocking out the last two roster spots in the span of, I think, like 3 hours. Both of these decisions came in, and we got a much better picture of what Auburn basketball is going to look like next season. The most important one was that Tahad Pettiford is back. He has withdrawn from the NBA draft process. This was the deadline day as we record this here on Wednesday. Not a surprise. You see most guys do that. Pettiford posted on his Instagram story that he was working out with the Suns and the Raptors. I mean, you want to you're in this thing. You might as well get as much information back as you can. But we'll start with that, Jason, then we'll talk about their new addition in the front court. I always felt like this is where things were leaning, even from the beginning, even before Tahad Pettiford had a nice NBA combine. It really just felt like, because of his size and because of his lack of experience, could he have been a draft pick? Absolutely. If he had stayed, he would have been a second-round pick, I think, easy. He would have been an early second-round pick, but Auburn was prepared to get him well compensated. They were prepared to make him a focal point of next year's team, and I think the opportunity for him to come back and try to play his way into the first round next year is just too great, and for him to be a really important part of this team. Bruce Pearl's now going to give him a lot of responsibility next season.
Yeah, and I think you look at it and you go from, you could have been in the mid to upper 30s, probably somewhere in a pick like that. I don't know that Tahad ever gets into a lottery situation, but I think Tahad Pettiford at 24-7 next year, which is he could be that guy easily. Then you start talking about 15. It then becomes a much different scenario for a guy like Tahad Pettiford. Yeah, to me, if it was going to happen, it was going to happen after those couple of days of the combine a few weeks ago. Like, if you're like, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen now. It felt like as you got to this time that this was, hey, I'm going to go let these teams see me in preparation for when they watch me next season on the court. They will then have a familiarity with me, my game, kind of my personality, all those things. This felt like almost like a junior day workout, in preparation for your next year at a college in football. It kind of felt like that same thing. And so the news itself, it's massive. No Tahad Pettiford on this team. They're still a good basketball team, but now you start talking about, potential through the roof. Now we'll see how the pieces fit together, all those things. But this is now once again, you have the pieces in place with a roster with Tahad Pettiford coming back to be the guy that it's now his basketball team. Last year it felt like, and hey, they did a great job with it. It was Janai Broom's team, but it felt like, well, it's a piece of Denver Jones' team. It's a piece of Dylan Cardwell's team. Next year, it may wind up being that way, but right now, it is Tahad Pettiford's basketball team, and everything else kind of revolves around him, in my opinion.
Yeah, Henry Patton from the OA News, he and I were talking today, and he said it feels like Tahad Pettiford just got a spin-off show. Just got his own spin-off series that's going to focus on his character development. Yeah, I mean, he's the only guy that, and Bruce Pearl said it earlier this month, like, Auburn fans are going to be excited about the opportunity. That's before he knew he was coming back. But, to see more of him, for him to get more on his shoulders. And frankly, you would have been in a really poor spot if this had gone otherwise. I mean, you can, and I absolutely think, and Bruce Pearl told us, that they probably had some really good contingency plans in place. I mean, this was the one spot on the roster. If you have the assumption that they had Jovic, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, if they had him kind of squared away, and we're just waiting on some things.
Yeah.
This was it. This was the only other spot you were doing
Yeah.
anything with. And so they were putting in a lot of work getting replacements ready for if Tahad Pettiford had decided to turn pro. But this just makes everything so much simpler. Mostly also because he's your point guard. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
really big deal to not have to worry about that guy.
And he's a point guard that knows your system. That would have made it. You're not going to find anybody as talented as him either, in my opinion. Not right now. You might have got a guy that was close, but you're getting a guy that's close that you have to teach everything. Now you're getting an ultra talented guy who also knows your system, who can also now lead the rest of the guys. You're right. This is like getting your quarterback back and going, okay, now you can help teach the offense to everybody else, but you're getting that guy back. And so, yes, this was, and I said today, I was like, this was the linchpin to next basketball season. This was the thing that you go, hey, that has to be in place for everything else to kind of follow along behind it. And it was massive news for them. And obviously you saw a lot of excitement from the coaching staff and doing those things as well. I think everybody knows how important this part was.
Auburn hasn't had an opportunity to see what their 5-star guards can do in a second season. Sharif Cooper was gone. Aiden Holloway decided to transfer out. I mean, they got second years from guys like Mustafa Heron, who was a 5-star, like Isaac Okoro was like a fringe 5-star. But, you know, it's been a while since they've, in the Bruce Pearl era, they haven't had an opportunity to see what you can do in terms of development. I think a lot of people sort of wondered, like, Sharif Cooper, if he had stayed another year, like, what could he have done? Different kind of player.
Correct.
But it is exciting to think about the potential of what Tahad Pettiford can become. I think he's going to be one of the best returning players in the SEC. Like, preseason first team all SEC is probably not. It's probably the likely thing that it's going to be. Yeah. And so, I mean, going to be a lot on his shoulders.
2 or 3 of those guys all decide to come back today or announced. I think Alex Condon was maybe yesterday or today. Atega Owe comes back today. I mean, you look and go, those guys that were all guys last year, they should be the guys that are the kind of feature guys going into it. But a lot of new talent. I mean, like this Auburn roster. I mean, you look at this, and Nathan, you did a great breakdown today of kind of what the roster looks like. And, you know, before we kind of get into that, got a second edition today too that factors into this as well.
Yeah, Filip Jovic was a guy that the name had been going around for quite some time. Bruce Pearl had said 2 times this month, he had said, we feel like we have an international player coming. He was his word usage was very confident about that. And so you felt like it was only a matter of time, but had to sign on the dotted line, had to make sure everything was clear. And then Jovic announces today. Obviously a really interesting player. You're seeing this more and more this offseason, I think more so than ever before. In fact, FIBA had to put out a statement about needing a letter of clearance for players to, I think, sort of like a good faith thing. Like, hey, you're not just chasing money. Yeah. Because in the portal era, you saw it this offseason, lots of teams are going the international route because it's like, well, if there's not a guy you want in the portal, go look at professional players overseas. That's exactly what Auburn did. We knew they needed another front court player. They have Keyshawn Murphy, who now we know he's going to be your 5, whether it just depends on whether you added a 4 or 5. Jovic is a 4, absolutely. 6'9". He's played 2 professional seasons over in Serbia this past season. 12.3 points per game, 4 rebounds, shooting 57% from the floor. He's got a lot of skills, Jason, and it's going to be interesting to see how it translates. Not the most just like overly athletic guy, but a guy just has a lot of skill sets. You have to be a good ball handler to play European basketball, and he can do that at 6'9". And he's a guy, this team, Jason, over the last 14 years, has produced 15 NBA draft picks. Yeah. This team that he was on in Serbia. It's the team that produced Nikola Jokic, the 2-time NBA MVP, along with a ton of other draft picks. And so he's already kind of like on some NBA radars. People are going to be watching very closely to see what he does at Auburn. And now they bring in a guy who has a couple years professional experience, 20 years old. He's probably going to be maybe your starting 4, maybe your backup 4, depending on what happens there. Really interesting to see what he grows into at Auburn.
Yeah, no, I mentioned this before we came on the air, but I watch a lot of West Coast basketball, and he reminds me a lot of the guys that have played for St. Mary's in the last decade. and what they do with Randy Bennett. Guys that can step out and make shots. A lot of his game, and much more so than I realized, was post play back to the basket. He does a lot of that and has good moves inside. Not the big bruising physical guy, but he's not small either. And so I think it's a really interesting dynamic because we haven't seen Auburn have a four like this. I mean, you look, and last year it was two bigs. It was really big guys. Then we've seen, whether it was, Chaney Johnson, Anthony McLemore, even Horace, like those weren't guys that had this skill set. Anthony McLemore was a talented guy, but he wasn't this guy. And so I think it's a really interesting dynamic when you look at the rest of this roster, what he brings to the table, because he is a guy that you look at him and you go, man, that's a fundamental guy. Not extreme, he's not a guy that's going to go win the dunk contest, but he can get up and make plays above the rim. But it is a little bit of everything. And that's why I go back to St. Mary's and you go, man, they beat you with, it's kind of like, I think about like Butch Thompson talks about in baseball, they dominate in a routine play. You watch him play and you go, that's what it is. Like that guy's making the correct play and making those plays. You add that to, like dynamic point guard, big time scorer at the three, maybe the 2 and the 3. You have a guy that can score at the 5. Like all of a sudden you add a guy in that goes, and we talked about this one time before. I felt like they needed the Bill Winnington, type player that the Bulls had, to where you go, the guy that just makes you pay for every mistake. This is a guy that can do some of those things. And so I really think it's an interesting guy because, like, man, you got to break down the defense, and leave this guy open from 15 feet, and he's going to make a shot. And so I think it's a really good pickup and a really good day for Bruce Pearl and this staff especially.
Yeah, and they may not be done. So that's 11 scholarships now. If they add anybody else, it is not going to be somebody that they believe is going to be in the rotation per se. Bruce Pearl said last week, if they do use another scholarship, it's going to be on a wing, just like to get some depth. And then they could just use one on a walk-on as well. But in terms of rotation, feels like we're kind of finished here. Feels like everything's wrapped up. Jason mentioned it. I did a piece today just kind of looking at what this lineup can look like. There's good bit of guesswork involved with that because there's so many questions they have to answer. And there's a lot of versatility for this group. I mean, the point guard is almost the most clear spot. Point guard and center are pretty clear.
Yes.
You've got Pettiford and Caden Magwood. Like that's what Caden Magwood is. He's going to be your freshman backup point guard like Todd Pettiford was last year. And then at center now, Keyshawn Murphy, backed up by Emeka Oporum, is going to be pretty clear as well. Everything else, you've got like a handful of guys that you could spread minutes between the 3 and the 4, between the 2 and the 3. I mean, it really is just going to be interesting how all of that fleshes out. And I think it's just going to be what proves to be the bigger strength. I was kind of thinking about that today. Like Kevin Overton is a really well-rounded, good size guy who's been a sixth man in a power program. Do you like him at the 2? Or is Abdul Bashir just too much of a bucket to keep off the floor? Like it's which of their strengths when they get into summer practices at the 2, the 3, and the 4, who kind of reigns supreme at those spots. I think Keyshawn Hall, I think we know, is going to be a dude somewhere on this team. It just depends on where he goes. That's where he ends up, I think, is going to then determine where Elijah Freeman ends up, who can be like a 3, maybe a small ball 4. So really interesting to see what this lineup turns into.
You got 3 guys in that you go, there are 3 guys that could all play different spots depending on what you want to look like. Maybe do you want to go really long, athletic, do length? And I think can Bashir, can he handle it well enough to be the 2? That's the thing you look at, because Overton's a guy that has background. He's a guard. He's more physical than probably any other guards you have, which could be a part of this. Could he become your Denver Jones type guy and be the guy that has the physical defensive prowess? Because you look at the other spots and you go, offensively, you should be in pretty good shape. I mean, you got some offense at every spot on this lineup. you may go, hey, well, you like to have a defensive stopper, a guy like that, and he's a guy that can shoot the basketball too. The other question I had, Nathan, I'll get your thoughts on, is you like to try to find a potential third point guard just in case. Who would that be out of this group? Is it Overton? Is it?
I think it's Bashir.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is could it be Bashir? I mean, that's the part. So because if you were to lose one of the other guys, you go like, who would be your next guy to give you some minutes at the point? So a lot of things to be decided for this team, but roster that now is very intriguing for this group, and going to be a fun early part of next season to see how the kind of pieces fit together.
Yeah, Bashir, I think, did a lot of that at Casper Community College, but it's whether it's, I think he was just kind of bringing the ball up the floor and then shooting it. So it's like, does he actually know how to be a point guard? He has on all his social medias that he's a 6'7" point guard. I think that's obviously kind of like tongue in cheek, but I think he probably has some of those skills as well. Yeah, it's gonna be really, really interesting to see how everything fits. I mean, even like if Emeka Oporum isn't ready to go right away, because I don't think that's a guarantee. What do you do as a backup 5? Like, it's just there's a lot of questions. Sebastian Williams Adams has a 7'4" wingspan. Can he be a small ball 5? Like, it's just
I think lengthwise he could. Can he? I mean, he's 225, 230. It's hard to count on a freshman from a physical standpoint, but he might be a guy that can give you 8 to 10 minutes. And so then you go, okay, I think that the thing you look at right now is, and this one, I keep wondering if there's a guy that pops up as another big. Is that something? Because you go right now and you go, man, other than Keyshawn Murphy, you go, man, there's not a whole lot of proven big guys. I mean, you only have one more real big anyway. You have a freshman and you have 6'9", that comes in, you go, yeah, he's more like a small forward, even though he's a 6'9" guy. That's what I kind of wonder, like, do you go to try to find another body to give you some added, maybe protection there in the paint? That's a possibility too.
Yeah. Do you get into Darren Scott? Like, do you get somebody like that you're
somebody that you go, hey, somebody that can give you something in case of, break the glass kind of guy?
They've got the spot for it. They've got the scholarship spot for it. Bruce Pearl seemed to insinuate they would be done after one more guy in the front court, but I don't think scholarship-wise they're finished, so we'll see what they do there. We'll move on from basketball now to baseball, which has a huge, huge weekend coming up at Plainsman Park as the NCAA tournament gets underway. And Jason, a incredible selection day for Auburn baseball. I mean, obviously there was not necessarily nail biting. You knew you knew this whole time they were going to be a regional host, but it's all right. Are you going to get a top 8 national seed? Auburn ends up as the number 4 overall seed. I mean, just it goes to show that your body of work from game 1 to whatever the SEC tournament lost to Texas A&M, whatever game that was, all of it matters the same. And goodness, Jason, I mean, they put themselves in position now. Their road to Omaha this season is going to run through Plainsman Park.
Yeah. For them to get there, they don't have to leave home, and you really, as Butch Thompson likes to say, you only have to beat 3 teams. That's it. There's 3 teams standing between you and the College World Series, and so they've done it a couple of times, and it's hard to have a better opportunity than to do it all at home, as they'll have the opportunity to do. If they win this weekend, have an opportunity to have a super regional next weekend at home, and so. Can they not necessarily get hot at the right time? Can you go out and play the way you have for most of the season at home? That's going to be the key for them, because they've been really good at home this season. Played really well. You've won all your home series, and they've done a good job of doing that. Swept LSU at home, swept South Carolina at home, and so you've done a good job of playing well at Plainsman Park. That's all that's asked of you right now, to do that once again. And so I think a fairly favorable regional, when you start talking about that, when you're the number 4 national seed, you should have what you would think would be a fairly favorable home regional. You get Central Connecticut State first on Friday night, 6 o'clock. And that's a team that has some offensive prowess, and, playing from in the Northeast. If you look at it for Auburn's, you should be able to maybe attack them from a hitting standpoint. They got some quality pitching, but they're mostly righties, and so that's been a pretty good recipe for Auburn baseball this year. But on the other side, you get NC State as a 2, who's really good pitching. Stetson as a 3 seed, who's this wins 40 games again and has some really good players, and as usually has pretty good success in regionals. So, but massive opportunity, and I would expect to have some once again record-breaking crowds at Plainsman Park this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Good year to have a good home success. I mean, is it their best record, SEC record ever at home this season?
Yeah, tied it.
Like
I think tied it the best record at home. This is the third regional in 4 years for Auburn. This is only the second time that they've been a national seed. 2003 was the other one. So again, huge opportunity for them as you look at it moving forward. And so I think this is a team that, because of last year, had a down season last year, didn't make the NCAA tournament, and then lost the regional to end the 2023 season at home. So this has been kind of 2 years in the making for guys like Ike Irish and Cooper McMurray and some of these other guys that, kind of waited to kind of have this opportunity again. So I'd be really surprised if they don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that motivation. You've got the fact that really up until Ole Miss and Texas A&M, which, again, as we talked about, it doesn't matter what you do at the end. Up until then, they were playing extremely well. I know just kind of some things didn't necessarily go their way. On the other side of it, if they were to advance to Super Regional, Coastal Carolina, their regionals on the other side, that group also includes East Carolina, Fairfield,
Florida.
And Florida is a potential SEC matchup there.
That's right. And, Fairfield's had a little bit of success early on in some regionals. And so that'll be an interesting matchup with Coastal there. And then, East Carolina's had to win the conference tournament to get in. Of course, Florida has been as good as anybody the second half of the SEC season. But they've been really banged up. They've had some injuries throughout the year, dealing with a couple of injuries now, including potentially your starting catcher. So, what do they look like from a physical standpoint going into this thing? They got some talented arms, and of course, Florida's, what you're going to get there. Physical team. That's not a huge ballpark. Florida's a team that can hit home runs, and so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But for Auburn, the only thing that matters for you this weekend is taking care of business coming out. And I really think this is an offensive weekend. Gets warmer, ball carries more. This is an Auburn offense that has done some pretty good things at home. And so I think for Auburn, while pitching's always important, I think this is a weekend where Auburn's bats and those guys have to come to perform. I think that's going to be a big key for them this weekend.
Well, there's nowhere else to go other than Auburn Undercover for that. If you guys have followed along at all, Jason does a tremendous job covering this team, and now it is the most important time of year. So there's nobody else you should look for your coverage this upcoming weekend. And obviously Auburn hopes even past that into deeper into the postseason. We're going to take a quick break to swap in Christian, who will jump on with Jason to talk recruiting and maybe a little bit of Auburn men's golf. So we'll be right back.
And welcome into the second half of the show. Jason's still here. I'm subbing in for Nathan. Lou Will off the bench.
Yep.
But Jason, before we get into recruiting a little bit, I'm going to put a bow on Auburn golf, their season. Been covering them all year. It was another strong year for them. It was not another national championship. But those things are not easy, especially not in the sport of golf, especially not in team golf and match play.
Match play, yes.
Yeah. Auburn finishes stroke play at the NCAA championship in second place. Sputtered a little bit on that fourth day. They went in with a 4-stroke lead. Arizona State came out on fire, and Auburn finishes in second in stroke play. They were the only team that shot under par all 4 days out there in California. Get into match play on Tuesday against Virginia, the same team that they played last year in the quarterfinals. They end up losing 3-2. Honestly, it was pretty interesting, not necessarily what you would expect. Caden Pope was 3 down with 5 to play, and he was in the first slot. He ends up coming all the way back and winning his match on 18, which is astounding that he pulled that off. A guy that doesn't have that experience. He obviously didn't play in the lineup last year. Jackson Coyven wins his You expect that to happen.
Yes.
And then some of the older guys, along with Josiah Gilbert, the sophomore, Brendan Valdez, he had 3 really good days of stroke play to start. Struggled on the 4th day. I think he shot 4 over, if I remember correctly, on the 4th day of stroke play. And then those struggles just carried over into match play. On that Virginia match, he lost, I think, 5 and 4 or something like that. And then Carson Baca was 3 up through 5. And then I think it was by hole 9, it was tied. And by hole 11, he was trailing. So the 2 seniors struggled a little bit in their final go, but Auburn still finishes in the Elite 8. They won 5 tournaments over the course of the season. Some people were really upset. Some people were, still pleased with the season. Talked with Nick Kleinert afterward. He said, look, we didn't accomplish the goal, but we still had a pretty historic season. Yeah. It's another really strong run for that team and that program.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you look at it and you're right. It's when it's team golf and especially match play team golf, all it takes is a couple of guys to kind of be off at the same time. And in stroke play, it doesn't matter as much. You have a couple of guys that shoot 74 and you go, oh man, it's not good. Yeah, but you have 2 guys that are, combined 8 under, you're still good. But in match play, it's completely different. And, you would rather have 3 triple bogeys. And you go, man, you'd rather have 3 triple bogeys than make 5 bogeys in a match play situation.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you lose. It don't matter how much you lose a hole by. And that's part of it sometimes is that, and you'd rather just have a couple of really bad holes and be done with it. And it was just a little bit of inconsistency. And I think that's some of the things that kind of have plagued them at times, I think, this season. Been really good at moments and then just some inconsistencies. And in the end, I think that bit them, there. And of course, Oklahoma State goes on to win it, and a team that really came on down the stretch and played really well. And so Oklahoma State wins the national championship, and Auburn comes up a little short. And you lose a couple of veterans, guys that have played a lot of golf, but you got some really talented players returning for Auburn, along with some newcomers that should help. And you got Billy Davis kind of waiting in the wings. So this is an Auburn team that, once again, you look at next year, should be another one of the favorites to go out there and win a national championship.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, you just touched on it. You've got a strong core 4. You've got Jackson Coyven. Despite earning his PGA Tour card this week, he's coming back next year. He's your superstar. Josiah Gilbert, he's been solid. Want him to take a next step next year, but he's one of those anchors. Caden Pope came on towards the end of the year and get some really valuable experience there. And then you mentioned Billy Davis, and then got some other guys there as well. Have some freshmen coming in. Yep. So you've got 4. You put those 4 up against pretty much anyone in the country, and you feel pretty good about it. So should be it'll be another really strong year for all.
Absolutely, no question about it.
Moving on to recruiting, because it's that time of the year. It is recruiting season, and it's going to be busy.
Yep.
It's going into the summer. I mean, there was already one huge official visit weekend, the May 16th through the 18th. Now it really ramps up. It does not stop. There's big weekends every weekend. There's midweek official visitors. There's a couple elite camps. There's a couple 7-on-7 camps. It feels like every single recruit is taking their official visits and then going to have a commitment at the end of June or in July or in August before their season starts. So it's really about to ramp up. Jason, I think let's go position by position to break down the OVs this weekend.
Yep.
Starting at quarterback, the last time we did a show, we weren't sure didn't feel like there'd be 2 quarterbacks visiting at the same time, same weekend, because Travis Burgess was scheduled to come in this weekend, as was Landon Duckworth.
Yeah.
Well, Travis solves that issue by committing to North Carolina. In that, he kind of creates another issue for Auburn. But you've got Duckworth coming in this weekend. It's going to be interesting. It's one of the most interesting official visitors of the weekend, simply because, look, Landon Duckworth is extremely talented. Does Auburn really want to go pay another elite level quarterback again after Deuce Knight? I mean, Duckworth is the number 6 quarterback in the country. He's the number 50 player. You're going to have to fork up some cash to get him. You're not going to just get him on a discount. He's ranked right about where Deuce Knight was.
Correct.
Is that something you're going to do?
It's going to be really difficult to imagine that in today's climate. And let's face it, it's part of what you have to factor in nowadays, especially with, well, hey, if this House settlement passes and you get this quote unquote salary cap where you're then going, hey, here's what our budget looks like. But even without that, it's hard to imagine right now that you're tie up that much money in 3 quarterbacks. It would be really hard to think about that. Now, he's a guy that's in state. That might factor in a little bit. But you're right. It's part of this process now where you start thinking about it going, how does that work from a number standpoint when you start talking about need areas and you go, well, you need this guy and you need this guy. Right now, we would assume that Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight would both be back in 2026. And so you start going, okay, how does that work? We don't know. And the only person who could answer that question is Landon Duckworth, and he's probably not talking about it. So we'll see how it goes. But I think it is one of the interesting parts of the weekend for sure.
It'll be very interesting coming out, exit interview on Sunday and the buzz from talking to different people. Will we have the same exact mindset right now where it's like, look, good visit, but probably just not going to make a lot of sense? Or is it all of a sudden going to be, look, Auburn's invested, they're willing to make the charge? I mean, we should know something pretty quickly, I would imagine, whether or not that recruitment is going to become serious or whether or not this is just a visit.
Yep, I agree.
Offensive line, no running back, receiver, tight ends. Offensive line, you've got Wilson Zaire coming in. You've got, I believe it's pronounced, if I remember correctly from talking to him in the spring, Jelani Miller from Arizona, and then Parker Pritchett.
Yep.
2 massive targets. Wilson Zaire is a guy who Auburn was the reason not the reason, but they started his recruitment exploding. They were the first big offer for him.
Yep.
Obviously the younger brother of Killian. Now you've got to fend off some other teams. He's already officially visited Florida State and Georgia. Georgia made a huge move. Alabama's in there. Michigan is in there. Wisconsin is in there. That one's going to be tough. And then Jelani Miller, look, he loves Auburn, but he's from Arizona. Yeah. USC and Stanford are making big pushes as well. Can Auburn get over the distance factor with him? That'll be the question to watch there.
Yeah, you're right. Parker Pritchett's already committed, so you're in good shape there. Wilson Zaire's another, when I think about, okay, what guys do I really want to pay attention to? He's one of those guys. Now, the thing about him is probably won't find out a whole lot from him because he is very close to the vest. He's not going to be, just kind of going crazy, saying a bunch of stuff. He's very calculated in what he said. His brother was the same way.
He's very honest, but he's very calculated.
Correct. And so Killian was the same way, and a guy I really like. And, he came back and visited with him, the last time he was there. And so, that's another one I really want to see because I think he's a guy that has NFL potential. When you look at him, you look at his size and look at the background. I think, again, offensive line guys, they've done a great job. 2 or 3 or 4 guys in every one of these visits. And it's part of something they're doing a much better job of. And now people still wonder, like, get the 5-star offensive tackles. There's only a handful of those guys. That's still really difficult. What you have to do is go sign offensive linemen because it's much like pitching where you go, well, if you want 3 really good pitchers, you better sign more than 3 pitchers because it's not going to work out that way. You better sign 7. Well, the offensive line's the same way. If you want 3 really good ones, you better go sign 7 or 8. That's what they're doing now, and this is part of that process.
It is still easily the most developmental position in college football, and it's not close.
Yep.
You mentioned Wilson Zaire. As we keep going down the positions, I think Landon Duckworth is the most intriguing visit, but I think Wilson Zaire, Jaquez Wilkes, and probably Jair Edwards are my 3 most important visits, which going to have a long form over at auburnundercover.com. Going through all the official visitors, and I'm going to rank them just on my opinion of how important they are, where Auburn needs to make a move or, whatnot. So that's something to look forward to. Moving over to defense edge, got an Auburn commit, got an Alabama commit coming in this weekend. You got Hezekiah Harris, and then you've got Jamarion Matthews, who's been committed to Alabama since February, originally from the state of Alabama, moved over to Gainesville, Georgia. I think earlier this year it was. He's an interesting one. He visited already this year for Big Cat, but he's been pretty locked in with Alabama. And then Hezekiah, you've got the lead, but Tennessee and Florida are making it interesting. He was just to Tennessee, been there a couple times this year, been to Florida a couple times this year. Now you just brought in his older brother as a preferred walk-on offensive lineman in the spring transfer portal window. That should help, but it doesn't secure the deal by any means. So it's kind of about, the way I put it in a story writing earlier today was extending your lead. Extend your lead with Hezekiah Harris, and then Jamarion Matthews. The edge board is just so loaded. I don't know where things stand with him, and I don't know where he even holds Auburn necessarily. We didn't talk to him after Big Cat, so there's a lot to be figured out this weekend with him.
There is, and you start thinking about the guys that have already visited on the edge board, the guys that are still left to visit on the edge board, and so you start thinking about it going, probably 2 or 3 of those guys if you can get them. And so I think it makes it where you look at those guys and because, hey, Jaquez Wilkes is a linebacker, but he very well could wind up being at that position as well down the line because of his size. And so who knows where he winds up. Yeah, like it is another one of those. Hezekiah is a guy that has been committed a long time, a guy that Rock Bellantoni came in and said, hey, nothing's changed. We want you. That is still there. And obviously with Miami Harris, here and doing those things now, that should only help Auburn there. And Hezekiah he's looked at other schools, but he's remained committed to Auburn. And so you're right, this weekend it will be a big one to see if they can go, hey, that's the Auburn, and that's the bond that I felt all along.
I'm less concerned about Hezekiah Harris than I am about a guy like a Jermichael Garrett or even Shadarius Tootle at this point.
Yeah, correct.
But I think Auburn is fighting hard to keep Shadarius Tootle. I don't necessarily feel the exact same about Jermichael Garrett at this point, who was supposed to OV this weekend, but canceled, and he's officially visiting Ole Miss is the latest that I got there. So speaking of linebacker and Jaquez Wilkes, he'll be in this weekend. That's a guy that we're watching super, super closely. TJ White, really new name from Mississippi. Quite honestly, I don't know much of anything about his recruitment. He hasn't visited at all. So it's interesting that he's popping up. And then Anthony Davis from Grayson, a guy that we felt like was an Auburn lean. Watched him for a long time. His recruitment's gone down a little bit, but part of that is because Adam Balagoon Ali's recruitment has gone up. And they're recruiting them at the same spot there, at the dime linebacker position. And it feels like Auburn only wants one of those guys. But like you talked about with offensive linemen, you can't just recruit one dime backer. Even if you decide that Adam Balagoon Ali is your guy, you've got to recruit other guys. You've got to recruit Anthony Davis. You've got to recruit others. So linebacker is one of the bigger positions this weekend. And all eyes there. I mean, they're definitely on Jaquez Wilkes. Yeah,
no, I think so. And an interesting guy when you look at him, and it kind of gives me Keldrick Faulk vibes a little bit, not in the recruitment part of it, but in the guy that you look at him and you go, man, I see a guy that's going to be so much bigger and stronger when he gets on the college level, but you can see the athleticism now, and it's overwhelmingly dominant, the level he plays at right now in 1A football in Alabama. A guy that in the end, there is something about Keldrick that I always thought Keldrick Faulk was going to wind up at Auburn. Like if Auburn paid attention to him and recruited him, he was going to wind up at Auburn. They're doing that with Jaquez Wilkes right now. And, Christian, we know him. He is a guy that, hey, hunting, fishing, doing all those things.
Yep.
When you think about that and you think about being an hour away from home and the opportunities here and those things, I think that for me makes Auburn in a pretty good spot for Jaquez Wilkes.
I don't think that they'll get that one done this weekend, but I'm not counting it out.
If there's one that happens this weekend, that's where I would start with. Yeah, because right now honestly don't feel like guys are going to commit in the next couple of weeks anywhere because of all the visits that are scheduled. But if you said, hey, pin me down and say one guy that could, that would be probably the first guy I would start with.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking through the whole list. He would be one by a wide margin.
Yeah.
Last position group that's coming in this weekend, 3 safeties. Jair Edwards, mentioned him earlier, from St. Francis Academy. Tyreek Green from Buford. He's popped up on campus quite a bit over the years. And then Darrell Bell, Florida State commit from down South Florida. He's been committed to Florida State since 2023. Hasn't visited Auburn at all, to my knowledge. I don't remember him ever being on campus. I know for a fact he has not been on campus this year, at least. But as TJ Rushing is kind of building out his board, a name that pops up. So that's an interesting one. He is kind of in the Jamarion Matthews category for me, where it's like, look, I can't tell you all a lot about his recruitment now. I want to learn this weekend just as much as other people. There's a lot. This is a feeling out weekend for some of these guys. Tyreek Green kind of included. Georgia's the team to beat there, but how much is Auburn pushing? Where does he kind of sit? How does he value Auburn? A lot to be figured out there. And look, we know Jair Edwards. Auburn has 2. I mean, they're ranked as the number 1 and I think number 3 safeties in the country, Braylon Womack and Jair Edwards. Yep. You know those are the top 2. If Auburn could find a way to get both of those guys, there's always a spot for those guys in the class.
Yeah. And Jair Edwards, obviously, with the connections, with guys he knows on campus, that's a big deal. But obviously, he's a guy that has everybody in the country coming after him. Darrell Bell's interesting. You're right, because the first thing I had to do was look up, and it is very rare that I have to look up a high school, but I'd never heard of Barbara Goldman High School in Miami. I went and looked it up, and it wasn't started till 1995, and so it kind of was a break off of kind of American Heritage and Hialeah Lakes, those areas, and so that was not a school that I can remember. I'm sure they have had some prospects, but that's the first time that Auburn's ever recruited somebody out of Barbara Goldman High School. I can tell you that, and so. But Jair Edwards, you're right. I mean, him and Womack are the 2 guys you look at going, man, those are the things you point to when you start talking about the safety position.
Yeah, if you could just, in a dream world, you get both of them. Realistically, if you can come away with one of those guys, especially after the safety class you signed last year, and then you get a Tyreek Green, you get a Darrell Bell, you get someone like that, along with Wayne Henry, who's already committed, you feel really good about the safety class that TJ Rushing is putting together.
Yeah, and Tyreek's a guy that, Christian, we've been talking to and watching and interacting with now for 2 or 3 years.
2 years, yes. At least 2 years. I mean, there was a point, he's listed as an athlete on 247. There was a point where he was being recruited as a running back by Auburn, lightly.
I think the first time we saw Buford work out probably at 5:30 on a random Thursday morning over Buford. They were like, hey, he's a running back. And then we went and watched him play, and he wasn't with a running back. He's more of a safety guy. The other thing I do, he, from an attitude, personality, all those things, he's a guy that feels like a fit, though, because, I mean, he's always saying hey and talking and to you and doing those things. So looking forward to kind of seeing how that goes as well.
Yeah, Tyreek, Ty Boogie, probably one of my favorite nicknames in the class. So that's where the official visit list stands as of right now. Recording this Wednesday night, about 10 o'clock. Names can still get removed and added. Wouldn't shock me if another name or 2 just pops up, or a name we didn't have. So definitely stay tuned at auburnundercover.com, because we'll have that full list out on Friday and more coverage. One other quick note as well, I should mention, as y'all are listening to this on Thursday, 2027 Alabama edge commit Jabarius Chicken Garor. That might be the best nickname, Chicken. Yeah. He'll be visiting on Thursday. Big visit. He's a guy that we love out of Viger. Been committed to Alabama for a long time, and he'll be back on campus Thursday, spending some time with Rock Bellantoni. So that's just an interesting tidbit. And then should mention this as well. The first elite camp is on Sunday. So as 12 official visitors, or however many leave, then it's the camp. Don't know a whole lot about who's going to be at the camp yet. Honestly, some of these guys, like a Hezekiah Harris, might stay and do private workouts and stuff like that. The one interesting name that we do know about, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Have not talked to him.
Yeah.
Nika Hepi. It's spelled Nikau, last name Hepi, from New Zealand.
Yes.
Has never played American football before.
Big boy, though.
He is huge. I need to 6'7", 353. He's with the NFL Academy, and they're coming over, and it's a handful of guys. But he's a guy that Auburn gave him, I believe, his first offer. Now, you might wonder how in the world did Auburn ever find a kid from New Zealand that doesn't actually play football yet? Some New Zealand newspaper put a story out about how he was joining the NFL Academy and going to try and pursue college football. There was like a 90-second videotape of him doing some football workouts and stuff like that, and Auburn offered him, and now he's coming to camp. Now, when we say offer, it's a,
hey, want to take a look at you.
yeah, we would like you to make the trek from New Zealand to come over, and he's doing that with NFL Academy. Him and some other guys, they're going to go to Auburn, go into some mega camps where a bunch of schools are able to go to and stuff like that. So he's going to do kind of a summer tour through the States. And then his goal, I think he's going to try to play high school football somewhere this fall, but I'm not entirely sure. But that's the one that really excited to watch him on Sunday. And I'm sure Auburn feels the same way. That'll be really interesting.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of that Daniel Falele. I think that's how you say it. Played in Minnesota, was from Australia, big, massive offensive lineman. He actually came to IMG Academy and played, I believe. Signed with Minnesota. People were like, oh, he's too big. He's 6'9", or whatever he is, 340, 360, whatever. Well, now he's playing for the Baltimore Ravens. And so it kind of reminds me a little bit. Let's see, he's listed at 6'9". He's listed at 6'8", 380.
Goodness.
But yes, and so kind of reminds me a little bit of the same story where you go, big athletic human being. Can you teach him how to play football? And if so, could be a guy that could play on the offensive line.
Here's the thing with him too, and I'm just spitballing here. This is me totally thinking. If he comes in and has a good camp day on Sunday, like if he lights it up and he looks good and Auburn's like, look, that's a huge piece of clay that we really want to have, he could be in the class.
Yeah.
Like he could, if Auburn says, look, we want you, he could commit on Sunday. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that is one that I'll be watching closely to see how he performs, see how Auburn likes him, whether or not they make a move. I mean, it'll be fun to watch him. However it goes, to watch a mountain of a man from New Zealand who's never played college or high school football before. So stay tuned for that. We'll have all that covered at auburnundercover.com. Jason, after the mega podcast that you've been on the whole way for almost 48 minutes now of basketball, baseball, golf, and recruiting, I think we've covered all of it.
Yep.
I think we've got everything covered. So appreciate everyone for tuning in on this Thursday podcast. Stay tuned. We'll definitely have one coming out of the official visit weekend. Not entirely sure when we'll do that, but we'll for sure do one probably early next week, and then probably another one late next week as well, going into more official visits. So stay locked in here. Stay locked in at auburnundercover.com, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.